appreciate that. Round of applause for Phil right here. Good Patriot, congratulations. Here it's been a successful evening for you. So, thank you all. It's great to be here. I was telling Phil, with the length of that movie, you can make that a feature film. I don't even need me I already took my speech from myself. It's nice. I appreciate it. I was at the debate on, Tuesday night in Philadelphia. Guys, it's good we have free and fair media-moderated debates, isn't it? That's historic feat, 3-on-1. We haven't seen that in American politics before. But I'm going to kick this off just because it's fresh off my mind to just see what actually happened there. Not just at this debate, but tie it to the last one. Now put the pieces together to see what's actually going on in the country, all right? So the last debate, hosted by CNN in June, that was the earliest ever presidential debate in televised general election history, okay? That was the condition for the Biden administration agreeing to debate. They agreed to the September 10th debate, but they would only agree to that if there was also a debate in the month of June, the earliest ever one. Now, why did they do that? Well, it turns out it was a trial balloon. It was a test run to say that if Biden overperformed, great, they're back in business in the race, but if not, they would swap him out. And there's another trick at the heart of that it's worth seeing, because what the media did back then is they banked credibility. So after Biden tanked in that debate, they said, hey, we're going to criticize Joe Biden for a month. And that actually caused the public to fall into a bit of a trap, right? So the public, a lot of my even left-leaning friends or independent voters who I'm trying to bring along to our side, what they say is, no, the media is not biased because I saw them criticize Joe Biden for over a month. And what we realized is this was all, in some sense, part of the plan. It was a trick, an optical illusion that bought that credibility with the public, that they then cashed in to say the media, hey, has proven themselves to being able to go after Joe Biden even harder than they did after Donald Trump, and then you get a debate like the one we had on Tuesday night. And so what's the lesson for us, actually? The lesson for us right now is we're around 55 days from an election. The other side has consistently, in laying the traps, been one step ahead. Where does that leave us right now? We were promised a red wave in 2022. That never came. Well, let's look even further back, 2023, 2022, 2020, 2018. The other side has been consistently one step ahead. Now, they've blamed Donald Trump for this. They've blamed the issue of abortion for this. I think all of that misses the point. The real reason, and this is, I think, some real introspection for our own side here, some tough medicine for us in the Republican Party. I think the real reason we didn't have that red wave in 2022 had nothing to do with Biden or abortion or anything else. It had nothing to do with Donald Trump. They tried to blame him too. No. It had to do with the fact that we railed against the radical Biden agenda. We said we're running against Joe Biden. He's an old man. He has cognitive deficits. That's obvious, right? We say his cognitive deficits. Focus on one candidate and criticism against him, without actually offering an alternative vision of our own, who we are and what we actually stand for. At the time I declared for U.S. president, we had that debate stage. They said it was a condition to get on the debate stage that you had to sign the Beat Biden pledge. I had a conversation with Ron McDaniel and said, this doesn't make any sense. We're not going to be running against Joe Biden, so why are we focusing our entire agenda on a Beat Biden pledge when it's not going to be Joe Biden a year from now? He's not in any functional sense the president of the United States anyway. And I'll tell you something, Biden's cognitive deficits, they were not a bug for the people who control him. They're actually a feature, because that's what allows the system to exercise control over their candidate. It's no different with Kamala Harris. Right? Her own deficits, she has her own deficits of her own. We'll call them policy deficits. Her policy deficits, again, they're not a bug. They're a feature for the people who control her, for the system that controls her. And that's what I want us to wake up to, is that whether it's Sherrod Brown, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, it doesn't matter. We're not running against a candidate. We are running against a machine. Okay, we're running against a system. And the reason we need somebody coming from the outside, and Donald Trump, the thing I love about him, is that, say what you will about him, from the left, right, you can agree on this. He is an outsider to the broken politics of yesterday. We need somebody to actually go in and break that system. That's what draining the swamp is actually all about. That's what we need to wake up to as a movement. We're not going to win this by obsessing over Kamala Harris any more than we failed to win in 2022 by focusing on Joe Biden. The way we're going to win this is answering who we really are. What do we actually stand for? We're done just running from something. Now is our moment to start running to something. Back to our vision of what it means to be a Republican, what it means to be a conservative, what it means to be an American in the year 2024. And to me, it means we believe in the ideals of 1776. That's who we are as Americans. It means we believe in ideals like merit, that you get ahead in this country not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. That's why we're dead set against the racial quota regime, the DEI agenda, and affirmative action in the United States of America. That's anti-meritocratic, and we're done with it. It means we believe in the rule of law. And I say this as the kid of legal immigrants to this country myself. They came to Southwest Ohio in the 1970s, my dad did, with not a dollar in his pocket. I've gone on to found multi-billion-dollar companies. I say this as the kid of legal immigrants to this country. That means your first act of entering this country cannot break the law. And that is why we will use our own military to secure our own southern border. And if we've had the largest influx of illegals into this country, we're going to have the largest mass deportation in American history. That is not racist or xenophobic. That is what it means to stand for the rule of law in the United States of America. It means we believe in free speech and open debate in this country, that you get to speak your mind openly as long as I get to in return. That shouldn't be a Republican idea. It's an American idea. It means the people we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who, for God's sake, actually run the government, not the unelected bureaucrats in the deep state that are running the show today. By the way, I talk about one mass deportation, mass deportations of millions of illegal migrants to this country. We're going to get that done. But don't forget the second mass deportation, which is the mass deportation of millions of unelected federal bureaucrats out of Washington, D.C. Okay, that's also how you save a republic. A tale of two mass deportations, that's how we save a nation. These are not black ideas or white ideas. They're not Democrat ideas or Republican ideas. Not really, in my book, they're not. They're American ideals that we fought a revolution to secure in this country. And the question for us right now is, do we believe those ideals still exist? I actually do. Not in some fake politician, kumbaya kind of way, but in a true way. I believe those ideals still exist. But we have to do the hard work of reviving them. And here's the problem in our country right now. I learned this during my presidential campaign over the last year. Traveled this country, roomfuls like this. One of the beauties of living in Ohio, I grew up in Cincinnati, live in Columbus, split the difference. My aunt and uncle live in Dayton. I saw them before coming here tonight. One of the beauties of growing up in places like this, I actually spent a lot of time in Springfield, Ohio, believe it or not, growing up. It's sad to see what's become of Springfield today. You go 50-mile radius of any of those places, draw a circle around it, that's a cross-section of the country. I had that growing up, but I traveled the entire country last year running for U.S. president. Here's what I learned. We're not really nearly as divided as the media would have you believe. Right? The narrative right now is that we're divided as a country to a breaking point. And I don't blame people for saying that. That's what you get if you turn on the cable televisions, what you get on for going on your social media algorithms. But when you travel this country, there's no social media algorithms in the air between us today. Roomfuls like this. I realize we are not nearly as divided as a country. 80+% of us share the same values in common. Right? We might disagree on the tax rates. We might disagree on, tariffs versus sales taxes versus, those are policy details. We can debate them vigorously. But 80% of us agree on meritocracy, free speech, open debate, the rule of law, fighting the violent wave of crime spreading across this country, self-governance, that bureaucrats shouldn't be writing rules that Congress should have passed in the first place, that you shouldn't have corruption in the federal government, lobbying the government for at least 10 years until after you've left the government. Most people agree on these basic principles. Congressmen shouldn't be lining their pockets from trading stocks. Why should they be in the business? Nancy Pelosi's bank account be bigger because she's allowed to engage in effectively a legalized form of insider trading. Most Americans agree on these basic concepts. And half the 20%, by the way, on the other side are people younger than me who never learned those ideals in the first place. We can bring them along too. But the way we call that bluff is we've got to overcome this culture of fear in our country. That's what happened. We have a culture of fear that is spread like an epidemic across the United States of America. Fear of losing your job. Fear of your kids getting a bad grade in school. Fear of becoming an outcast in your own community. And that culture of fear has replaced our culture of free speech in America. You want to know the best measure of the health of our democracy? We hear a lot about our democracy. Turn on MSNBC on a given night. Whose democracy, I wonder? You want to know the best measure of the health of American democracy? I'll tell you what it is. It isn't the number of green pieces of paper in our bank account. It isn't even the number of ballots we cast every November. The best measure of the health of American democracy is the percentage of people who feel free to say what they actually think in public. And right now, we are doing as poorly as I can remember in my lifetime. And the way we're going to fix it is by all of us, not just me, not just Donald Trump, but by all of us, every one of you, every one of us, starting to speak the truth in the open again. Say in public what you will say in private at the dinner table. Say it with a spine. Say it with conviction. Say it with respect. But part of respect is that you respect your neighbor enough to tell him what you actually think, not some fake, woke-washed version of it. That's how we get this country back. And I realize most people across this country, the things I would say on the campaign trail, if I'd said them 20 years ago when I was going to St. X High School or just graduated from St. X in Cincinnati, they would say, why are you saying these things? They're too obvious. Today, they're too controversial to say. The exact same things. If I tell you that God is real, that there are two genders, not 3 or 100, that the climate change agenda is a hoax because fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity, that reverse racism is racism, an open border is not a border, that parents should determine the education of their children, that the nuclear family isn't a bad word, it is the greatest form of governance known to mankind, that capitalism is the best system we still have to lift people up from poverty, that there's 3 branches of government in the United States, not 4, and that the U.S. Constitution is the strongest and greatest guarantor of freedom in human history, we would say these things are true, okay? We won't apologize for who we are or what made this country great the first time around. Speak that truth with a spine. That's how we get this country back. Our founding fathers, they made that sacrifice. They weren't afraid. They had every reason to be afraid, but they weren't. 56 men, they signed the Declaration of Independence. Now, what became of them, we don't often ask. They were like the people in this room, by the way. And thank you to the people in this room. I thank you. I know every one of you has made a sacrifice to be here. You don't have to be here. You don't have to be opening up your checkbooks or spending your time the way you are, but you're doing it because you care about this country. Well, let me tell you about our founding fathers. They were like the people in this room. They were landowners. They were merchants. They were successful lawyers. They were, by the parlance of young people today, they would call them privileged. Well, they were actually. And that's actually what made their sacrifice all the more remarkable. 56 men signed the Declaration of Independence. What became of them? 12 of them had their homes ransacked by the British and burned down. 5 of them were captured by the British and tortured until their deaths. 9 of them died in the Revolutionary War. 3 more of them had their own kids die in the Revolutionary War. They didn't make the sacrifice for them. They made it for us, so we could be here 250 years later in the greatest nation known to mankind. And so the question for you and for us today is this: what sacrifice are we now willing to make to save our country so our kids and our grandkids and their kids will 250 years from now be saying the same thing about today? That's a choice we make. Okay, there's every reason to complain about unfair conditions heading into this election. I joked around about the debate earlier, winning at the ballot box. Personally, I believe that 50-50 or 50.1% isn't going to get the job done. A landslide minus some shenanigans is what we require because that's still a victory. We're not playing on an even playing field, but we can't just sit here and complain about that either. Okay? I preach it to the left, I preach it to my kids. It's time that we preach it to our own selves ahead of this election as well. Hardship isn't a choice. It's something that happens to you. But victimhood is a choice. Hardship is not the same thing as victimhood. We're not going to choose to be victims. We're going to choose to be victorious. That's who we are as Americans. I teach it to my kids. The number one factor that determines whether or not you're successful in achieving your goal is actually you. It's not the only factor that matters. There's a lot of other things that are unfair in life. Life is not fair. I was having this conversation with my wife last night about something unrelated, but related to our kids. But it applies in politics too. Life isn't fair. But the number one factor, there's a lot of other factors that could affect whether or not you achieve a scholarship, whether or not your business succeeds, whether or not you get that promotion, whether or not you win that election. Life isn't fair. We're not on an even playing field. We never are. We never have been. We never will be. It's not the way things work. But the number one factor, it's not the only factor, but the number one factor that determines whether you achieve your goal is actually you. And for us, it's now time to level up as a movement and say, you know what? We're not just against what the other side puts up. Here's who we are and what we actually stand for. And if I'm being honest, we haven't done enough of that yet. We still have 55 days left ahead of us. And that's what I'm calling on us to do. I say this, I'm speaking to you as but for some of you, maybe an older person, but a relatively young person still in this game of politics. I'm 38 years old. I was the youngest person ever to run for U.S. president as a Republican last year. And I will tell you something, speaking as a member of my generation. I'm a millennial. Here's what happened in our country, especially in my generation, is that we're actually lost. We're hungry for a cause right now. We are starved for purpose and meaning and identity. At a time in our history when the things that used to fill that void, faith in God, patriotism, hard work, family, these things have disappeared. And that leaves a vacuum in our heart, a black hole. And when you have a black hole that runs that deep, that is when the poison fills the void. It almost doesn't matter what exactly the poison is, actually. We obsess over that. I obsess over that at times, too much. Wokeism, transgenderism, climatism, COVIDism, globalism, Zelenskyism, as I joke around at times, anti-Semitism on college campuses. These are symptoms of a deeper void. I think if we want to win this thing, I'm not just talking about this election anymore. November 5th, that is not the destination. That is the start line. If we want to win this thing, as in win this country back, we're going to have to step up and fill that void with the real thing. The other side, they're good at this, actually. You got to give credit where credit's due. They'll give you a vision. It's not one I agree with, but they'll give you their vision of the world. Our relationships are governed by invisible power structures, power dynamics govern human relationships. Race, gender, sexuality, climate. And we're sitting here criticizing that vision. People like me. We'll criticize that vision, but we haven't yet offered that alternative vision of our own. We haven't in a long time. Individual, family, nation, and God beat race, gender, sexuality, and climate if we have the courage to actually stand for something. That's our moment. We're a nation with a rich history, yet we've forgotten our history. Actually, speak to my friends on the left, I'll remind them of this. I think it was Malcolm X who said that, a nation without history is like a tree without roots. It exists, you can see it, but it's dead. That's what I see today is the young people across this country, you ask them who wrote the Declaration of Independence, they have no idea. Next thing you tell them it's Thomas Jefferson, the only thing they know about him is he's a slaveholder. A nation without history is dead. Okay, and right now, we're on life support. That's where we are. We call it an American dream for a reason. They want me to they encourage me to say the American dream is alive and well. I'm not going to come here and tell you that. American dream is not alive and well. It is alive and hanging on for life support. That's where we are. Ronald Reagan wouldn't be in here today telling you that it's morning in America right now because it's not. But it can be. That's the choice we make. We want to pass on that history to our kids. I said, you heard me say that in the video beforehand. I think every high school senior who graduates from high school, we could start it right here in the state of Ohio. Every high school who graduates from high school as a senior should be able to pass the same civics test that every immigrant has to pass in order to become a voting citizen of this country. Revive that missing pride in the United States of America. We have a 25% recruitment deficit in our U.S. military. That's because less than 16% of Gen Z says they're even proud to be an American. That is a crisis of national pride in this country. Part of the reason is we've sold the myth that, you're going to go through a 4-year college degree. You're going to be a gender studies major in California. That gets you a head start on the economic dream. It hasn't worked out that way. But I don't just care to scold that next generation. It's up to us to step up and actually lead them. Tell the stories of American history that got us to where we are. And I catch myself doing this sometimes. We'll talk about the importance of talking about our history, and then sometimes I just tell myself, well, why don't we just actually talk about our history? So, think about the stories we tell. I got a question from somebody who asked me on the campaign trail, who's your favorite president? I said, it's Thomas Jefferson. He said, but he was a slaveholder. I said, yes, he was. He was an imperfect man, just like you are, just like I am, just like every one of us is as a fallen human being. Our nation was founded not by gods, but by fallen human beings, just like those of us who are here today. But I would rather live in a nation that has ideals and falls short of them, rather than a nation that has no ideals at all. And that's what the United States of America is. We're not founded on perfection. We're founded on the pursuit of a more perfect union. Take that guy, Thomas Jefferson. Not only did he write the Declaration of Independence at the age of 33, he also invented the swivel chair. He invented an early version of the polygraph test, the lie detector test. Could have used that on Kamala Harris the other night. Thomas Jefferson gave it to us. We just didn't use it. He actually designed the Virginia State Capitol building. He was fluent in multiple languages, signed off on the Lewis and Clark expeditions. We were the pioneers, the unafraid, the explorers. He wasn't the only one. The likes of Benjamin Franklin. He also signed the Declaration of Independence. But at the same time, he was one of those 56 men, but at the same time, he was an inventor. He invented the lightning rod, the Franklin stove, named after Benjamin Franklin, one of the leading inventions in the field of thermodynamics, was invented by a guy who was also one of our founding fathers signing the Declaration of Independence. He invented musical instruments that were used by Mozart and Beethoven. It's a guy who was also our founding father. Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, they welcomed a guy by the name of Joseph Priestley, who came here from England. I thought of him actually a couple months ago. When you hear this character, think how far we've fallen. We've got Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and then now we got Tim Walz, running for the vice presidency of the United States. John Adams was our first vice president. Tim Walz says, they're weird. These people are weird. Well, you know what? Actually, our reaction was, no, we're not weird. You're the weird ones, and I think we have a stronger case if you ask me. But actually, the beauty of this is just take a step back. America, the beauty of America is actually, you know what? We are kind of weird in the course of human history, and I'm kind of proud of that. I mean, we were the country where our founding fathers, they said, for most of human history, the idea that we, the people, could be trusted to govern ourselves at the ballot box, where every person's vote gets counted equally, as long as they're alive and not dead. That's something that we got to maybe have a little bit of work left to do. But still, the basic idea behind it, at least, that was a weird idea. Because for most of human history in old world England and for every other culture nearly before it, that was a strange idea. The idea that you get to speak your mind and express any opinion, no matter how heinous that opinion is to me. That's a crazy idea for most of human history. So I think what made America great the first time around is that we were a little bit different. I brought up Joseph Priestley. He was a chemist, one of the first people who came to this country as a scientist. Trust the science crowd. What do they have to say? He had some beliefs that were strange by the standards of the Anglican Church in England. But he came here to Pennsylvania. Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin welcomed him. Said, you know what? You're free to explore and express those ideas in the United States, even if you weren't in the old world. He became one of the great chemists of his day. I could go on probably all night. Robert Livingston, he signed the Declaration of Independence. He was also, while he was the ambassador to France, I'm making this up, as a side gig, along with Robert Fulton, becomes one of the inventors of the steamship, one of the major drivers of the Industrial Revolution. You go straight down the list. You're going to get me down this rabbit hole. I could go down for all of our founding fathers and tell you they were weird guys in the best of ways. That's who we are. That's who we've always been. It's who we were, certainly. The pioneers, the unafraid, the explorers, the people who would not be stopped to achieve the maximum of their God-given potential without any government or system or culture standing in their way. That's the America I know. That's the America my parents came here to pursue legally through the front door. That's what the American dream is all about. I used the word meritocracy earlier. What does merit mean? Sometimes I just say these words, and then I got a good question from a young man on a college campus. Talked about the importance of merit in America. You have to choose. I gave a speech about you have to choose between merit and group quotas. You can't have both. Right? Either you believe in group quotas or you believe in merit. You cannot have both. So thoughtful young man raised his hand and asked me, okay, what is merit? I said, that's a thoughtful question, actually. It made me pause for a second. What is meritocracy? A meritocracy, I believe, is a system in a country. I believe we're a meritocratic country. What does it mean? It's a system that recognizes that not everybody has the same God-given gifts, but that whatever your God-given gifts are, you live in a country or operate in a system that allows you to achieve the maximum of your God-given potential without anybody standing in your way. That's truly what the American dream is about. We're not all the same. And actually, it's a beautiful thing. It would be pretty boring if we were. And bring that back to the next 55 days ahead of us. Those of you here, every one of us has our own unique God-given gift. They're not the same as the person sitting next to you. But what I'm asking you to do is you go home tonight, you look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, what is your unique God-given gift? And then ask yourself, how are you going to use those God-given gifts in the next 55 days to do what is right for this country in the short time that we have left? And I do believe it's a short time we have left, potentially. If my kids are in high school before we get this right, I don't believe we have a country left. We might have a space of land that we call the United States of America, but it will be like that tree without roots. It will be dead. We're on life support now. It'll be dead when my 4-year-old just started preschool. If he's in high school before we get this right, it's a hollowed out husk. That's the ball game. And I refuse to be the generation, when I look back at the greats, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, James Madison, what they bequeathed us, I just refuse, for the sake of posterity, to be the generation that screwed it up and didn't pass it on to my kids and the next generation. And I'm inviting you to make that same commitment. You don't have a lot of time left. This is our moment. It is our 1776 moment in the United States of America. 2024 is our 1776. And the way we're going to win it this time, it doesn't have to be through the revolution the way they did it. All we have to do is win it at the ballot box. They made it that easy for us. It's up to us to now not screw it up. And so that's what I'm asking you to do. Remember who we are as Americans. Don't vote as a Republican. Vote this year as an American. Vote as somebody who cares about what this country was in the first place. That's what's at stake right now. It isn't one of those elections where we're bickering over the tax rate. This is an election about who we are as a nation. Who are we? What does it mean to be a citizen of this nation? I'm not some nebulous global citizen fighting climate change. I'm a citizen of this nation, the United States of America. I am proud of it, and I have a duty to this country. That's what you're going to do at the ballot box in 55 days. We have celebrated our diversity and our differences so much in the last 20 years that we forgot all of the ways that we are really the same as Americans, bound by that common set of ideals that set our country into motion 250 years ago. E pluribus unum. It's on the bottom of our coins. Let's take it out. Look at it. It's a creed of our country. We used to say it. Melting pot is what they called it when I grew up in Southwest Ohio. We don't use that word anymore. It means from many, one. Make no mistake, our diversity, it can be a beautiful thing. I'm looking around the room tonight. We've got multiple shades of melanin. I brought one of them. You're welcome. I see a couple of different genders, 2 of them, to be precise. So we're diverse. All right, congratulations, guys. We are diverse today. So what? So what? Our diversity is meaningless unless there's something greater that unites us across that diversity. Think about it. Without that, what are we? We're a bunch of two-legged, different-looking higher mammals with a bunch of different tans, walking some geographic space that we call a country, doing what our iPhones tell us to do on a given day. That's what I see sometimes. That's not the America I know. The America I know is a vision of what that place can be. And it's up to us to live and revive that vision today. Revive that country. I don't think we have to be this nation in decline. Donald Trump said it the other night, and I agree with him. He said it at the debate, and it was powerful because it's true. We're a nation in decline, he said. But we don't have to remain a nation in decline. We don't have to be ancient Rome. We don't have to be at the final leg of the fall of the American experiment. They said, are we in the fall of Rome? Here's one more bit of history I'll close on. Actually, it turns out there were many rises and many falls of the Roman Empire. I think there have been and will be many rises and many falls of this American experiment as well. So no, I don't think we have to be done with this ball game. We don't have to be this nation in decline. I think we still can be. Not in some fake politician way again, just in a true way. I think we can be a nation still in our ascent. A nation still on our way to that shining city on a hill. That country where we will actually look our kids in the eye and mean it. Kids know when you're lying to them. They'll look our kids in the eye and actually mean it. When we tell them you get ahead in the United States of America with your own hard work, your own commitment, your own dedication, and that you know what, you are free to speak your mind at every step of the way. That is the American dream. That is what we are running to. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what reunited us after the Civil War. That is what won us 2 world wars and the Cold War. That is what still gives hope to the free world. And if we can revive that dream over group identity and victimhood and grievance, then nobody in the world, not a nation, not a corporation, not a virus, not China, and certainly not Kamala Harris is going to defeat us. That is what American exceptionalism is all about, and that is what we are going to revive to save this great nation on November 5th. Vote Trump, vote Vance, vote Moreno, do your job, and I'm going to do mine. Donald Trump's going to do his, and our country's best days are still going to yet be ahead of us. Thank you. God bless you and your families, and may God bless our United States of America. Do not stop fighting until we get this job done. This country is worth saving, and save it we will. Thank you, guys. God bless. Thank you.
You're the best, man. Thank you.
It's great to be here. Congratulations, man.
Thank you. Good job.
Glad to be here. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
We're almost done for the day.
Yes. Good seeing you guys. Thank you. Good seeing you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Listen, I have
Hey.
to follow you, Mahak.
Oh,